Well, we can turn back to Northern Ireland now, as we expect the government to tell us what it wants to change about the protocol that has created this trade border in the Irish Sea. Sinn Fein recently made history by winning the most votes and seats in the election, but it's been unable to take its place in the Assembly as the DUP refuses to take part until the protocol is reformed or scrapped. Well, we can go live to Dublin now. We can speak to the Sinn Fein President, Mary Lou McDonald. Now, as we just heard from Brandon Lewis, the UK government's going to be publishing legislation tomorrow that we believe could override parts or change parts of the protocol in Northern Ireland. You told my colleague Beth Rigby that the blizzard of paper is problematic. So do you have sympathy with the view that the Northern Ireland protocol does need to be changed?
No, I do not, and I have even less sympathy with a Tory government that brags now for such a long time that it intends to breach international law. We're just about, I think, 40 days out now from that election in the north, and we don't have institutions of government. It's utterly disgraceful that we are in this place. And bear in mind, a significant majority of people returned to the Assembly in the north of Ireland support the protocol. The protocol is working. The protocol is the mechanism that gives the north uniquely unfettered access to the European market. And that is why we see in the north of Ireland, in contrast with Britain, with the exception of the City of London, the economy is strong, the economy is growing. And what the Tory government is proposing to do in breaching international law is to create huge damage to the northern economy, to the Irish economy. They propose to breach international law, and they are on an agenda of undermining, attacking and damaging the Good Friday Agreement.
You say there a couple of things to unpick there. You say that the Tory government, the UK government, is going to breach international law. Now, Brandon Lewis told me on the programme, he assured me several times that the changes would not break international law. What evidence do you have that it will?
Well, can I say to you that Brandon Lewis is talking through his hat, and not for the first time? Brandon Lewis should know, the Tory government should know, that where there are issues to be resolved with the protocol, issues of smoothing out its application, there are mechanisms through which that can happen. There is a willing ear, there is a willingness to engage by the European Commission, but the British government has refused to engage, has not been constructive, has sought a destructive path, and is now proposing to introduce legislation that will undoubtedly breach international law. And by the way, against the expressed democratic wishes of people in the north of Ireland who went to the polls and who made their democratic decision and have returned a majority of members that support the protocol. All of the business organisations across the north of Ireland will tell you that yes, there are issues that need to be resolved. Get that done by way of negotiation. But they will also tell you that the protocol is necessary, that the protocol is working, that the protocol can work better, because all of them, be very, very clear, know that jobs, prosperity and healthy economic growth rely on access to the European market. Nobody wants to jeopardise and forego that, and it's astonishing that the British government brags consistently that they will change, as they put it, or ditch elements of the protocol, breach international law, bring themselves into a collision with Europe at a time when we have war in Europe, cause untold economic damage to the north of Ireland. And why? Why? Well, because there is an internal leadership problem within the Tory party. It is disgraceful to use the north of Ireland, to use Ireland as a bargaining chip in their ongoing collision with Europe, all designed to boost the ego, the leadership ambitions of either Boris Johnson or one of his would-be successors. It's dishonourable stuff, by any measure, extraordinary stuff, that the British Parliament, it seems now, is set to have tabled before it legislation specifically designed to breach an international agreement that very Parliament ratified, and an agreement that not so long ago the current occupant of number 10 Downing Street described as oven ready. And let me emphasise again, in the democratic test on these matters, the people of the North have spoken. A majority of MLAs elected to the Assembly support the protocol, and when there is a vote in 2024, assuming that the Assembly is up and running, and even if it's not, a majority of those MLAs will vote to continue and support that protocol.
In 2024, of course, according to the Brexit deal, politicians in Northern Ireland specifically get to decide whether or not they want to keep the protocol in place. It's effectively like an exit clause that was worked into the original deal. I just wonder how important you think it is that those politicians in Northern Ireland get to make the final decision on the protocol, because there is rumours that the bill tomorrow, the legislation introduced tomorrow, could effectively override that consent vote.
Well, let me say this. Just remember that when Brexit happened and the vote was taken, people in the North voted to remain. Just remember that. And people on a cross-community basis from all walks of life voted to remain. And I would wager, if there was a vote on the Brexit question again next week or next month, that by an even greater margin, people in the north of Ireland would vote to remain. So Brexit never had the democratic consent or imprimatur of the people of the north. And therefore, any idea that the Tory government would try to rob the elected representatives of the north of Ireland of their rightful decision on this matter would be absolutely outrageous, and would mean that not alone is the Tory government waging an onslaught against the protocol, prepared to breach international law and walk away from its international obligations, but that in fact it is damaging, undermining power sharing in the north of Ireland, and it would be further and very, 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 very dangerous evidence of a Tory attack on the Good Friday Agreement itself. A very, very dangerous suggestion.
I mean, I should say at this point, obviously, that Brandon Lewis says that part of the reason they want to do this is to effectively restore all elements of the Good Friday Agreement as the assemblies are
Well, can I listen, Sophie, that just needs to be scotched. I mean, that's frankly beyond disingenuous. The Tory government consistently abuses language in a way that is mesmerising. They say they want to protect the Good Friday Agreement when they take the very actions that undermine and that could potentially destroy the Good Friday Agreement. That's the reality, and they are doing this in plain sight. They are colluding with the section of political unionism to keep the executive down in Belfast, to ensure that the north-south element of the Good Friday Agreement is now not operating, to wage an attack on the protocol to guarantee access to the European market, but crucially to ensure no hardening of the border on Ireland. They have acted unilaterally in terms of legislation to deal with victims and survivors of the conflict. They threaten still to withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights. All of the building blocks, in other words, upon which the Good Friday Agreement has been carefully constructed by all of us, are now being openly attacked and undermined by the Tory government. And I think it is so important that everybody in political life, quite irrespective of their view, be they Conservative, be they Labour, wherever we fall on the political spectrum, we have a joint vested interest in ensuring that the Good Friday Agreement is protected. And the Tories need to be called out on this, not just by politics, but by every sector across civic society and ultimately by the people. And whereas I have no confidence, I have to tell you, in Boris Johnson or his government, I have every confidence in decent people across Britain to realise that jeopardising the Good Friday Agreement and the peace that all of us have built is totally unacceptable.
It's pretty clear how strongly you feel about this. Would you like to see the United States potentially getting involved?
The United States is involved. The United States is involved because they know, as surely as we know, that what is at play here is a very, very deliberate set of actions that undermine the Good Friday Agreement. And everybody from the White House, from President Biden, across American politics, on a bipartisan basis, and you know as well as I do, there are few issues that unite political opinion in the United States, but this is one of them. All of us have skin in this game. Everybody knows that to protect the Good Friday Agreement, there is an absolute imperative on Boris Johnson and his government to act in good faith, to act constructively, to engage, to respect the rule of law, and to understand that Ireland will not be, let me repeat, the collateral damage in the games and gamesmanship at play currently within the Tory party. And I have to tell you, I believe that not alone do we have international diplomatic and political opinion on the side of Ireland on this question? I think any person with an ounce of common sense and an ounce of decency, and the people of Britain have that in abundance, know that all of us have to get on with our lives. We're living through a cost of living crisis. It's going to get really hard in the autumn and the winter. All of us know that we need a level of stability, maturity and competence. And all of us know that our relationships with each other are fundamentally rooted in the Good Friday Agreement and the protection of that.
We are out of time, but I do want to talk to you just very finally about the prospect of a border poll, essentially a referendum on a united Ireland. You've said previously that you think that will take place within the next 10 years, and you said that you want to see an indication from the British government as to how they might measure when they would regard it to be appropriate. Obviously, in Scotland, it was when the SNP had it in their manifesto. They then went on to win the most seats in the election and went on to enact that referendum. So at what trigger point would you like to see a border poll being called in Ireland? In Northern Ireland, sorry. Well,
my priority at this point, well, there will have to be two referendums, in fact, Sophie, in the north and in the south, in both jurisdictions. At this point, the big priority for me and for us is that preparation for such a referendum is underway. We have to have a very wide all-of-society conversation, and that has to include unionism, those for who will campaign against reunification, those for whom, as we move into United Ireland, this will not be their first preference, but we need to hear all of those voices, and so I have urged Dublin to begin the preparation now. I think there is nothing to be gained by burying our heads in the sand. I mean, the recent election in the north is just the latest demonstration of how profound the change is across Ireland. And of course, the government at Westminster, the British government, I think, have to indicate what their view is, how they view the matter of the tipping point when the referendums will be held. But either or, whatever the answer might be to that particular question, be in no doubt that change, positive change, exciting change, progressive change is underway in Ireland. That's good news for all of us on this island. It's good news also for Britain. Because part of the whole project of building a new Ireland is building, renewing, consolidating that relationship that we have with our nearest neighbour.
OK, thank you very much for coming on the programme this morning.
Thank you.
Very strong views given
My
from
pleasure.
yourself, of course. Thank you very much.